In the meantime, now, the United Nations Security Council has adopted a resolution on trafficking of persons, highlighting the connections between human trafficking and the financing of terrorist groups. This comes after a report by news network CNN on the slave markets in Libya sparked global outcry on abuses being carried out by traffickers.
Briefing the Security Council, top United Nations officials, including the Secretary General and the head of the organization's anti-crime office, underscored the international community's collective responsibility to stop criminals and terrorists from preying on vulnerable populations and migrants. This comes after the Security Council on Tuesday unanimously backed a resolution urging tougher action to crack down on human trafficking and modern slavery worldwide. The meeting also came on the heels of news reports showing African migrants in Libya reportedly being sold as slaves. In search of a better life in Europe and desperate to escape poverty at home, thousands of young Africans have crossed the Sahara deserts in the last few years, a journey that is dangerous and often deadly. Noting in particular the horrific images of African migrants being sold as goods in Libya, Secretary General Antonio Guterres also stressed the need to help Libyan authority strengthen their own capacity to protect and provide for vulnerable men, women and children.
Terrorist groups such as Daesh, Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab and the Lord's Resistance Army are forcing women, boys and girls into dehumanizing servitude. Committed in the shadows, these actions are serious abuses of human rights and may amount to war crimes and crimes against humanity.
Guterres also highlights the urgent need to create more opportunities for regular migration to restore the integrity of the refugee protection regime and to increase the number of refugees resettled in developed countries. The Security Council meeting also saw the unanimous adoption of a resolution by the 15-member Council in which it called on all member states to reinforce their political commitment and improve their implementation of applicable legal obligations to criminalize, prevent and otherwise combat trafficking in persons.
The Security Council agenda on trafficking should be linked with the process leading with the Global Compact on Migration and Refugees, as well as the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. Moreover, trafficking should be addressed in connection with the Women, Peace and Security Agenda and with the 6 grave violations against children during armed conflict agenda.
Libya has announced that it was investigating a report of African migrants being sold as slaves and promised to bring the perpetrators to justice. But skeptical that Libya alone can investigate reports of human trafficking, France has called for an urgent UN Security Council meeting on human trafficking in Libya.
Now, more than 10,000 Somalis have fled their homes in November to seek safety in Mogadishu over fighting in their country, Somalia. And that's according to a report by the Norwegian Refugee Council, which is concerned that the camps are now overflowing with refugees. Those running from the recent upsurge in the violence in the country's middle and lower Shebele region have put even more pressure on the already overstretched refugee camps. About 1 million Somalis have been displaced since January, and that's mainly due to drought. The charity organization is calling for an urgent halt to the fighting and aerial bombardment of the region, and that's in order to hopefully halt the flow of refugees. Now let's turn our attention to Sierra Leone, where a regional court has ruled that President Ernest Koroma illegally dismissed his deputy Samuel Sam Sumana in 2015 after accusing him of abandoning his duties by seeking political asylum in the U.S. Embassy. The Economic Community of West African States Court of Justice, based in Nigeria's capital Abuja, ordered the government to pay Mr. Sam Sumana his full salary and perks since his dismissal, when Mr. Sam Sumana has demanded a $250 million for describing his sack as unconstitutional. The government is yet to comment on the ruling. Now, dozens of armed security officers have been deployed to Kenya's capital, Nairobi, ahead of tomorrow's inauguration of President Uhuru Kenyatta for his second term in office. The main opposition leader, Raila Odinga, plans to hold a memorial rally for victims of alleged police brutality less than 10 kilometers from the inauguration, and this is despite a police ban on the event. Mr. Odinga boycotted the rerun election, saying conditions for a free and fair poll did not exist. The government says more than 20 heads of state and government are expected to attend Mr. Uhuru's inauguration. And a terrorist attack on a mosque in Egypt's northern Sinai province not only highlights a new change in the country's anti-terror situation, but it also indicates that the Sinai area may need to be addressed by the government. Experts believe that this group is quite different from extreme organizations in Syria and Iraq, and that's because its members are mostly local residents holding extremist thoughts, and that makes it even more difficult to fight against the terrorist movement. They call for the strengthening of anti-terrorist forces in remote places such as the Sinai Peninsula, and meanwhile reinforcing international cooperation to stop terrorism from spreading to other places. The attack on the Al Rawda Sufi Mosque last Friday is the first attack directed at the mosque in Egypt, and it's also the deadliest terrorist attack in the country, claiming a death toll of 305 people. Coming up after the break, Nigeria's government seeks the cooperation of the media in the fight against corruption. So join us again.